Welcome to Let's Connect Greater Portland, a show about the changes and challenges we face and the great things that people are doing to make Greater Portland a fantastic place. I'm Tom Bell. Today we're talking about the homeless situation in Greater Portland, and we have here in our studio two experts. Rachel Ohm, a Press Herald reporter who has written in depth about the issue, and Amber Lesperance, who has lived on the streets, and she actually lives on the streets today. And she was one of the people that Rachel profiled in her story last August, How I Became Homeless. This is such an important issue. If you, our listeners, have questions for our guests, please call us, 780-4909. That's 780-4909. Rachel and Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Rachel, for our listeners, give us the big picture overview of the homeless situation in Portland. What's going on? What are the trends? What's the scale of the issue?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think we're seeing levels of homelessness that we really haven't seen before in Portland right now. The city does a count of tents around the city. And the last I checked, which was a week or two ago, it was over 200. And even from earlier this summer, that's up quite a bit. I think in June, it was around 130 tents citywide that had been counted. So we're seeing a lot more people in unsheltered homelessness. The city's new homeless services center, which opened in March, has been full since it opened. We're also grappling with a big influx of asylum seekers that has slowed a little bit since the spring, but the asylum seekers are also a population that is really in need of housing and is utilizing the new shelter quite a bit. So it's just a tough situation, and it's been especially difficult the last few weeks. There were two of the larger encampments in the city that were cleared, one near Deering Oaks that was cleared by the Maine DOT, and then the Four River Trail encampment was cleared. Amber was living over there, and I'm sure she can attest to how difficult it was for people over there to have to pick up and move.
Well, yeah, some of us have been there for a long time. I myself was one of the first people there, and I had spent just over a year there. And between different providers telling us different things, some of us were under the impression that we had an extra 2 weeks, and we actually didn't. So I know I myself packed and moved in the last 24 hours, and it was insane. They don't treat us with respect like we're humans, it feels like. They literally just keep shuffling us around. And ultimately, it's demeaning. Like, the way they do it, it truly is.
So Rachel and Amber, you first met in August when you were doing that series?
I think it was a little bit before then. The series published in August, but I think we first met in May or June.
I believe it was May.
Oh,
honestly.
May.
Yeah.
And Amber, why did you? You wrote about your experience. You talked about your drug addiction, the death of your mother, your struggles trying to keep employment, and these are hard things to talk about, even like your best friend. And you decided you were able to talk to the whole community about this. Why did you do that?
Because for me, it's been a struggle. I've been on the streets for the last 3 years, and watching everything and the way the system's worked and hasn't worked, if we're not speaking up and we're not reaching out, we're not going to get the help that we need. Someone has to do it. I have really severe anxiety, and it's way out of my element to even be here with you today. But I feel very strongly about, getting us help, and we can't do it if we just stay quiet.
what was the reaction of the story? Did you get any reaction from other people who are homeless or people who know you?
You know, a lot of people were excited that, I chose to speak up. And a lot of people, we all, down on Fort River, we were a community, but more importantly, we became like a family. And I had nothing but real good support from most of the people down there, along with, people I've run into, just happy to hear that, someone else is, struggling and has a similar story.
Well, I think it takes a lot of courage to speak out. And I really want to thank you for speaking out.
Thank you. And I agree with you. It has taken a lot of courage. I struggle with it, but I need to. It's freeing, and I'm not, hold on a sec. I'm not ashamed of my story. It's made me who I am today. And I'm not ashamed of my situation. I know that my decisions have led me to where I am, but I'm working really hard to make the changes and try to come out of this. But it's not easy, especially when there's limited help.
Thank you for letting us know this story. Rachel, what's it like covering this issue? And, not just the policy, but visiting people where they live in the woods or encampments. I mean, what's that like? What's that experience like as a reporter?
It's difficult. I think back on the last two times that the encampments were cleared in recent weeks, and it just was not an assignment that I was looking forward to doing. These are people's worst days of their lives, and I have to go ask them how it's going. And I try to be sympathetic and as much as I can, and not intrude too much. If someone says no, they don't want to talk, that's fine. I tend to let it go. But it's really difficult, and it's hard to watch. And so I am very appreciative for people like Amber that have been willing to open up to me. I think covering those recent events where the camps were cleared, it was a little bit easier having my bearings and having met people like Amber and having talked to them several times over the last couple of months. We did that story in August, and then last 2 weeks ago when the encampment was cleared, I ran into her there, and we had that relationship already. So I felt more comfortable asking you, how is it going? Obviously I know it's not a great day for you, but you were still willing to answer my questions, and I really do appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you. You've put a voice out there for a lot of us, It's been rough, to say the least. The day of the move, I'd been down there since July of last year in that general area. I had bounced from one spot to another and then back to the same spot, and that was the spot you had found me in. And then I had a brief period of time where I was in the shelter, and when that was not a good environment for me anymore, I ended up back down at the encampment, and I felt more comfortable there because, like I said, we all became like a family. Talking to you is like talking to one of my friends. It's been easy. You definitely have shown, a lot of care, a lot of compassion for the situation, and I thank you very much for that, Rachel. I really, truly do.
But Rachel, for every person like Amber who's willing to talk, give you her real name, right? How many people do you have to talk to as a reporter to find someone who's willing to do that?
You definitely do get people that say no, they don't want to do it, but I think overall, I'm a little surprised. I think a lot of people kind of share a similar philosophy as Amber that it's important to share your story if you want people to help you, and to let the broader community know what's going on. So I actually, I've definitely been turned down and had people say no or say, I don't want to use my name. A lot of times when they don't want to use their name, I feel like we've been a little bit lenient about letting people do that. I mean, it's not ideal, but at the same time, I run into people that are like, well, I don't want my family to know I'm out here. It's embarrassing for me. And I try to be sympathetic about that and work with it if I can. But I think a lot of people do want to talk. I mean, even if they have those caveats about maybe I don't want my family to know or something, like they'll still talk to me. Like I feel like I don't really get a lot of like flat out no, like I'm not talking to you at all. And if you do, sometimes you're just catching them like at the wrong moment, and you come back and they've changed their minds.
What was the biggest surprise to you as you're working on this story? What did you learn that really surprised you?
I think just how hard it is out there. I mean, when I ran into Amber when the encampment was being cleared, I hope you're okay if I say this, but like you had a bad infection in your foot, and I was just like, oh my God, like she can barely walk. Like it's just like you don't realize like how difficult it can be for people. And then like another couple that I had profiled in that same story package, I ran into them when the encampment was being cleared also, and the man, he had been attacked and like someone had like sliced his fingers like with a knife, and they were like, yeah, he had like just gone out of the hospital. Like I don't know, like some of the trauma that people go through, I think if you don't really sit down and talk to them, like you probably don't realize like how rough it can be out there.
What about in terms of policy? Does anything of your reporting make you think differently about what's the best approach to this issue?
Yeah, I think in terms of policy, I mean, the time I've spent reporting and talking to the homeless, I think I've learned a lot about the reasons why people might not want to go to like a congregate shelter, like the city's shelter. I mean, there's a lot of people don't want to leave their partner. They have a pet and they can't take their pet to the shelter. When the shelter first opened, there was like a 6 p.m. check-in time, and people were like, I have a job. I can't like make it there by 6 p.m. They have changed that and made it a little more flexible. But I think I've learned a lot about like the reasons why. I mean, I think sometimes you hear people say, oh, people just don't want to go to the shelter. But I think it's a little more complicated than that. And there's a lot of reasons why they might be outside. So I think as we're thinking about policy and like ways to address homelessness, we need to think about like how can we create an environment that will get people off the street that they want to go to, that works for them.
So Portland is trying a new approach to respond to the homeless encampments with this encampment crisis response team. How's that been going? Is it working?
I'll let Amber weigh in on this too. I mean, I guess it's early to say. Like they first did the first work that they did was at the Fore River encampment, and the city and their community partners spent like a couple months there, and they did get some people into housing or shelter, but there were still a lot of people left when they decided to clear the encampment 2 weeks ago. So I think that approach of like taking it more slowly and not just like flat out clearing an encampment, but like giving outreach workers some time to work with people and try to find solutions before we do a clearing. I think that is something that most people agree with. But in practice, I think it's been a little more difficult than was anticipated to like actually get people out of that encampment.
I would definitely agree with that. I know for me, I didn't actually get the ability or chance to work with any of the team on that because my path's a little bit different. I'm on my way to rehab very soon, and I don't want to get into housing only just to come back, like lose it because I'm going to be leaving. But for some of my friends and family, my street family pretty much, we were a little shocked. They gave us normal, I think this is the same people if I'm correct, they gave us things we weren't used to having, like porta potties and a dumpster and running water, and then it was like we were ripped away from it back to, not having any of that. but I know that I think they housed maybe 9 people or got 9 people.
I think it was like 12 or 18. I think it got up to 18 at the end.
Which is awesome. But like Rachel said, the new shelter, there's a lot of rules and stuff that a lot of us can't comply with. For me personally, it's a mental health reason. With my mental health diagnoses, I can't be in that environment and be okay. So there's also a lot of that, going on. I'm not the only one with mental health disabilities. So, definitely finding different like ideas to help with different aspects of it would be, I think the way to go right now. So.
You're listening to Let's Connect Greater Portland, a show about the issues we face in Greater Portland and the movers and shakers leading the way. I'm Tom Bell. Today we're talking about the homeless situation in Greater Portland. We're here with Press Herald reporter Rachel Ohm and Amber Lesperance, who was featured in Rachel's story last summer, How I Became Homeless. Do you have a question for Rachel or Amber? Please call us 780-4909. That's 780-4909. So, Rachel, you were a City Hall reporter for 2 years, but now you have a new beat. You will be covering the State House with Randy Billings. And I was just interested. You learned so much about the homeless situation here in Portland, and now you're going to be in Augusta. What do you do with all that knowledge? Is that just something that's going to be in the past, and this is just a Portland issue, and it's not a state issue?
No, I think it is a state issue for sure. Portland gets a lot of attention because it's the biggest city, and a lot of people from smaller communities that are experiencing homelessness do end up coming to Portland because there's more resources here. But it's definitely a statewide issue. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I know like Maine Housing does a release every year of homelessness numbers statewide, and that has gone up consistently the last few years. I definitely think it's a statewide issue, and I am looking forward to finding ways to continue telling the stories of people like Amber and reporting on it from more of a statewide perspective. I know there has been some legislation recently that speaks to this issue. I know the Housing First legislation that was approved last session is a big thing that people in the homeless community and their advocates have been watching. I'm looking forward to taking this knowledge that I built up the last couple of years and using it to inform my time at the State House.
So, Amber, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Springville and Acton. As I said in the story, my parents split when I was 4 years old, and I lived with my mom for most of my childhood and visited my dad every other weekend out in Acton, but mainly Springville.
And why are you here in Portland?
I came to Portland after rehab in 2020 to live in a sober living home. I didn't know anyone out here. It was a fresh start, change people, places, and things, and that was my go. I completed rehab February 15th of 2020 and moved to South Portland at first and then into Portland eventually. And I found that the community before COVID happened was amazing. Like, the recovery community was huge. And from being from small towns, it was very beneficial for me.
So you're an example, actually, of someone from a small town who comes to Portland for the services. And then people in a lot of small towns of Maine will think this is a Portland problem, right? And Portland needs to take care of it. But it sounds like it's not.
No, it's definitely not just a Portland problem. It's all over nationwide. I mean, yes, we're in Maine. That's what we should be focusing on, but it is definitely a nationwide problem. COVID put a lot of people out of work, and, picking up the pieces of our lives prior to it hasn't been as easy as one would expect.
For years when I would see people living on the street, I would think, well, that's maybe a lifestyle choice. Is it a lifestyle choice?
No, not a lot of us choose this. I can say that over the years, people have grown more comfortable from my relationships and conversations with people in different stages of homelessness. I've been on the streets for 3 years, and I've had friends who've been out here for, 8, 15. The longer you're out here, the more prepared, I guess you could say, you are for it, and the more accustomed to it you are. But no, I don't think it's a lifestyle any of us genuinely choose to live.
Now, where are you living right now?
Right now, I am living in a tent down on Marginal Way. I was over at the Fort River Parkway from July of last year to September when they kicked us out. And then I moved over to the Marginal Way. I chose not to go into the park and ride just because it's a very clustered area. I don't handle a lot of people real well.
So, Amber, I think we have a phone call. Do we have a phone call?
Hi.
Go ahead.
I live
I'm having a hard time hearing that. Maybe Josh.
Can you hear me?
Okay, say it again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. I was just curious about how COVID affected the homeless situation. It seems that the encampments really grew around the time of the COVID shutdown and have continued. And I'm wondering, if the panel could talk about how COVID affected the situation.
Rachel?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's another thing that really surprised me when I was doing a lot of reporting this summer on the homelessness situation is how much COVID played into people's situations. I know, Amber, you talked about like COVID hitting you, and I think there were also like a lot of new resources for people during the pandemic. The Federal Emergency Rental Assistance is one program that was like federal money paying for people to stay in hotels as opposed to congregate settings during the pandemic. And that money just ended this summer. So I think when we saw that end, that's when we saw a lot of people ending up out on the street. And then just like job loss, like I hear a lot of people saying, I lost my job during COVID. Like that's how I ended up out here. I think it has really played into the situation a lot.
I would agree with you, Rachel. For me personally, I had a job when COVID had first started, and I was laid off very quickly. With the community shutting down, I relapsed, not having the support from going to meetings and those type of events that kept me sober. And when I asked for help at the sober living home I was at, I was actually kicked out for, not being sober anymore, which was really hard. And instead of fighting it, I just, I left. It seemed easier to, go outside of that environment and try to rebuild. I never would have expected that it would be this hard to get back out of that situation.
And the other impact of COVID was more people moving to Maine, right? Working remote and well-paid jobs in New York, right?
Right. So we're in like a worse housing crunch than we've like ever seen before, which I think is part of it too, is like there just aren't a lot of open apartments. Everything is more expensive. Like it's hard.
I think it's easy for people to see someone living on the street and think that's a personal failure. That person has failed in their life due to drug addiction or not able to, have a good job because they're lazy, right? I think some people think that. And lately I've been coming to the realization that it is a failure, but it's not their failure. It's our failure. Our failure as a society through our policies and our budget decisions. And you look at other countries like Japan, I was in for a couple of weeks, and Netherlands, I didn't see the homeless encampments that we have here. So it's definitely, I think, a reflection on us. Anything else? We're coming to a close soon. Anything else you'd like to say, Amber?
I'm going to go back onto the failure aspect of it. I don't look at it as a failure on my end or anybody else's end, in all honesty. Failure means you've given up, and I know I haven't given up. And the community hasn't given up. And people like Rachel coming in and trying to, let it be known that, we are out here, we are human. It is amazing to see some of the support. And yeah, you've got the people who are going to have their opinions and, judge and assume that, this or this. And that's understandable. We're only human. That's how we...
I have a question for you. Often when people try to build housing, like they build multifamily housing or apartments, and they go to a planning board and the opposition comes out against it. And the opposition is almost everybody there against the housing has a home. I've never seen actually someone who needs housing at one of these meetings because they don't have the standing. They don't know. The people who are going to live in these houses, these apartments, don't even know about it yet, right? And so if you had a chance, if there was a plan before a local planning board in our area for new apartments or affordable housing, and you had a chance to speak to the decision makers, what would you have to say, Amber?
Honestly, I wouldn't know what to say because I've never been in that situation or honestly even thought about it. But I would hope that they would understand that, we have, normal basic human needs, and that building these types of housing, even if it's efficiencies or, studios, that would help so many more people, who want to get off the streets, who want to actually better themselves, have a chance to better themselves. For me, I know going to a job interview and, I haven't showered first thing this morning, so I'm going to an interview a little disgruntled because I didn't shower today, which is the luxury you have of having your own home or an apartment or anything. It's discouraging. A lot of the things we need to do to pull ourselves out are just that much harder for us.
Thank you very much, Amber and Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, for helping us understand the issue more deeply. Also thanks to Josh Brister, our sound engineer, and WMPG, who collaborates with the Greater Portland Council of Governments in producing this show. You can reach us on Instagram at Let's Connect Radio. Join us next week for another conversation about the great work that's happening in our communities. Until then, be kind to yourself and to each other. I'm Tom Bell. See you next time on Let's Connect Greater Portland.